Goodman. In Zimbabwe, election officials have said a June 27th runoff presidential vote will go ahead despite the withdrawal of the opposition candidate Morgan Tsvangirai. Tsvangirai, the leader of the Movement for Democratic Change, pulled out of the presidential election's second-round runoff on Sunday, saying increasing violence had made a free and fair election impossible.
We in the MDC have resolved that we will no longer participate in this violent, illegitimate sham of an election process. The courageous people of Zimbabwe, of this country, and the people of the MDC have done everything humanly and democratically possible to deliver a new Zimbabwe under a new government. This violent retributive agenda has seen over 200,000 internally displaced, over 86,000 MDC supporters killed, over 20,000 homes have been destroyed, and over 10,000 people have been injured and maimed in this orgy of violence.
Tsvangirai beat President Robert Mugabe in a March 29th vote, but failed to win the absolute majority needed to avoid a second ballot. He's called on the United Nations and the African Union to intervene to stop the violence. The United States and Britain said they're prepared to bring Zimbabwe before the UN Security Council this week, while South African President Thabo Mbeki, who's mediating in the crisis, called for further dialogue between the two parties. Grace Quinje is one of the founders of Tsvangirai's party, the Movement for Democratic Change. She's a member of its National Executive Committee. She was arrested and beaten up multiple times in Zimbabwe. She now lives in South Africa, where she joins us on the phone. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Grace. Hello, Grace.
Hello?
It's good to have you with us. Can you talk about what's happening now, the significance of Tsvangirai pulling out of the presidential runoff?
Well, basically, the Movement for Democratic Change has taken the hard decision to pull out of what's really becoming a big charade. The violence is increasing. As we are speaking right now, the MDC offices are being raided by armed police. The rank and file of the MDC is being targeted. The Secretary General of the Movement for Democratic Change is in police custody right now, being charged with treason, which carries the death penalty. So the situation has been very, very difficult. The MDC to campaign, for the MDC to carry out this legitimate.
Grace, we're having trouble. Grace, we're having trouble hearing you. If you could, are you driving? Or are you on the street? We can hardly hear you.
Hello?
Hi, that's better. Could you say what you were saying?
Yes.
Yes, could you say what you were just saying again? We had trouble hearing you. Grace, we're going to call you right back. We'll go to a music break, and then we're going to go right back to you. Grace Quinje is in Johannesburg. She's a journalist and political activist. She's one of the founders of Zimbabwe's main opposition party, the Movement for Democratic Change, a member of its National Executive Committee. She's been beaten up many times in Zimbabwe, now living in South Africa. We'll come back to Grace Quinje in a minute. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman, as we attempt now to reach Grace Kwinja and get a clearer line. She's in South Africa. She's one of the founders of the Zimbabwean main opposition party, the Movement for Democratic Change. Morgan Tsvangirai, the presidential candidate of this party, has just pulled out of the presidential runoff. Grace Kwinja, we're going to try it again. Explain the significance of this weekend's pullout by Tsvangirai.
Well, basically, I think it was a tough decision for the MDC leadership to make, given that, you know, the MDC won the March elections at presidential, at parliamentary, and at local government level. But the election was increasingly becoming a charade in the sense that the military tyranny against civilians.
Grace, have you moved? Because we no longer can understand what you're saying. If you could keep the phone right on your ear, don't have it on speakerphone. We're just having some trouble.
Okay, it's on my ear. Basically, right now, as I speak, there are over 30 military trucks at the MDC headquarters in Harare. They are raiding the headquarters. The MDC has announced that it will not in the runoff.
Grace Kwinja, I'm sorry, but we just cannot understand you. I guess there's some kind of movement or there's just trouble on the phone, but you're breaking up.
No, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, try it one more time.
Okay. Well, I just said that it has been a very tough position for the MDC leadership to take. But then they had the option of being part of a big electoral charade or actually not legitimizing it.
What will happen now that Tsvangirai has pulled out? Mugabe has vowed to continue with this election, although he's the only candidate.
Well, basically, he will still lack the moral authority by Zimbabwe, and he is still not the elected leader. So he will not have the moral authority to be head of state in Zimbabwe. Secondly, Zimbabwe will continue to be isolated and a pariah state internationally. There will be no re-engagement with the international community. It will continue to be isolated. And thirdly, unfortunately, the only route that Mugabe will have to remain in power is through increased repression, because he knows that the people have rejected. He's going to continue to rely on instruments of repression to sustain his hold. So it's a sad situation, but I think that the burden is being placed on Zimbabweans to do something for themselves. And I feel that South Africa in particular and SADC should really be treating this as a serious emergency political matter.
Well, what about the Southern African development community, the SADC leaders, especially President Mbeki, where you are in exile now in South Africa? What can he do?
Well, firstly, he has to acknowledge that Mugabe has declared war against the people